Imagine waking up to find that the monsters under your bed have actually coordinated a military-grade assault on your city. Sounds like a movie, right? Well, welcome to this comprehensive investigative report. Today, we're breaking down one of the most intense, multi-dimensional, synchronized battles ever recorded, the 3-hour solar eclipse incursion. During a wildly unusual 300-year celestial event, the boundaries between the physical real world and the supernatural dream world practically vanished, triggering a massive citywide nightmare rampage. In this explainer, we're going to look closely at the exact military and magical strategies the defending Dream Knights used to prevent total societal collapse. We've got data mapping, time manipulation, and the fulfillment of ancient prophecies to unpack, so definitely buckle up.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've structured our analysis into a 6-part tactical agenda. We'll start with the celestial anomaly, move on to tactical defense mapping, cover the mirror gate stand, explore the time manipulation protocol, break down sealing the dimensional breach, and finally, wrap up with prophecies and aftermath.
All right, Section 1, the celestial anomaly, the convergence of dreams and reality.
So this entire crisis kicked off with a total solar eclipse, an astronomical event that hadn't hit Dream City in roughly 300 years. But this wasn't just a shadow passing over the sun. It was the ultimate catalyst for a massive dimensional destabilization. Look at this school news committee broadcast. What's absolutely fascinating is how ordinary people actually perceived this invasion. Broadcasting live, they reported a massive spike in organized crime, claiming that mobsters were going on a rampage everywhere. But here's the critical distinction. Ordinary cameras don't have souls. Because human technology doesn't possess spiritual awareness, it could only capture literal pseudo-forms. So while those with heightened supernatural awareness, like the Dream Knights, saw terrifying nightmare monsters invading, ordinary human technology and perception completely misinterpreted the supernatural incursion as real-world men in black suits and Yakuza. Crazy, right?
Now, to truly understand the sheer logistical pressure the defending Nightbane family faced, we have to look at this strict chronological timeline. Look at the zero margin for error here. They had exactly 3 dark hours. At T-0, the solar eclipse began, and the dimensional veil immediately thinned out. By just 1 hour in, the vanguards were completely breached by overwhelming numbers. By T+1.5 hours, the defenders were pushed to the absolute brink, and a desperate time freeze protocol had to be initiated just to survive. Finally, with literally 30 minutes left on the clock, the interdimensional gates were manually locked right as the eclipse concluded. If any one of these milestones had slipped by even a single minute, the city would have fallen entirely, no question about it.
So what's the science behind this devastating event? Well, in ancient Dagara lore, it's known as a celestial transition. Rare celestial events, especially a 300-year total eclipse, act as vast cosmic markers of transition for the worlds of dreams and reality. The veil between dimensions becomes so incredibly thin that dream-world nightmare incursions physically sync up with real-world mob hotspots. It's not just a spiritual shift, it creates temporary, invisible portals across the globe where dormant fears literally spill over into the physical realm. The astronomical alignment essentially acts as a localized gravity well, pulling the chaos of the dream world straight into human streets.
And right before the whole shebang started, a major prophecy from the ancient tome was fulfilled. The 5th rule. An unexpected dream of his will come true. Sand Nightbane realized this didn't mean his personal life goals. Actually, it turns out, the ultimate preparation for a supernatural apocalypse wasn't some ancient combat training, it was logging hundreds of hours into a specific video game he knew, Excalibur AOP, War of the Worlds, where nightmares literally invade reality. Sand realized the game's lore was predicting the exact invasion they were about to face. It's a brilliantly thematic lesson showing how our subconscious media consumption can actually blur the lines of reality, manifesting fictional scenarios as very real and pending threats.
Moving right along to Section 2, Tactical Defense Mapping, Securing the Border Wall.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they handle the logistics. Facing a citywide invasion, raw strength just wasn't going to cut it. The Dream Knights had to retreat to the Dream Realm's border wall and essentially wage a highly sophisticated war of data. So, how exactly do you stop an invisible, synchronized invasion? With step-by-step data mapping. First, Aline Arlene Atlas deployed her Level 1 dormant sigil, Christopher. Think of this as a massive, supernatural sonar radar. She mapped out the vast geographical areas of the dream world, locating the rampaging anomalies. Then, she ingeniously cross-referenced that supernatural data with verifiable real-world news reports of mob activity. By overlapping the 2 datasets, they pinpointed the exact coastal hotspots where the dimensional veil had torn. Once mapped, Concordia Kenya translated that binary data into a kinetic barrage. She deployed her Kraken Andromeda sigil, raining down coordinated, targeted aerostrikes across all those overlapping dimensions simultaneously.
But here's the thing. Absolutely none of this complex coordination would have been possible without the Pyrostellus Luminaris. This is a living sigil, a highly advanced magical technology. You can think of it like a supernatural, military-grade cloud server. It neurally linked the Dreamweaver's consciousnesses, constantly calculating optimal tactical actions, minimizing mental strain, and allowing seamless telepathic communication across vast dimensional distances. It was the ultimate command and control network, connecting those border wall analysts directly to the front lines.
Notice the central focus here, the number 3. 3 hours. That is the exact duration Concordia programmed her arrows to stun and immobilize the enemies. You might be wondering, why not use lethal force when your city is actively under attack? Well, it's because the Dream Knights possess a profound level of empathy. They recognize that these nightmares weren't inherently evil. They were simply ordinary dream entities driven completely berserk by the gravitational and supernatural influence of the solar eclipse. A true defender protects even the misguided, so Concordia flawlessly adjusted her sigil's intention to a purely non-lethal 3-hour suppression.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Mirror Gate Stand, the Vanguard under siege.
While all that high-level data warfare raged at the border wall, things were much, much more desperate on the ground. Because of a botched transport spell interference earlier that day, San and his brother Kieran accidentally warped directly to the Eternal Mirror Gate, the largest and most dangerous infiltration choke point in Nightmare territory. Standing shoulder to shoulder on the exact same battlefield, their dual perspectives really reveal the surreal nature of the dream world. San, operating without a sigil and relying on raw brute force awareness, saw the nightmares as men in black suits and yakuza with katanas. But Kieran, who is an experienced dream knight, actively channeling his sigil, saw them as terrifying pure dream nightmare monsters. It just goes to show, in the dream world, your strength, experience, and the supernatural rules directly alter your visual reality. To even stand a chance against the overwhelming numbers pouring out of the gate, Kieran had to act as a physical blockade, proving the incredible defensive effectiveness of his magic. He utilized his Blaze Sigil, a unique power capable of generating a massive wall of blue flame designed specifically to burn away evil. But because these nightmares weren't inherently evil, just rampaging, the Blaze acted as a tremendous concussive warding wall. It didn't incinerate them. Instead, it constantly knocked back the advancing armies, effectively buying precious minutes for the team, while San fought frantically in close-quarters melee without a weapon.
And right in the middle of this total chaos, San checked the ancient tome only to realize he had triggered the 6th rule. For 3 dark hours, he will fight to defend the gate that lies at the border between this world and the next. This prophecy directly tied San to the exact duration of the eclipse, raising the emotional and physical stakes immensely. He had spent years trying to outrun his family's legacy, but the lesson here is pretty profound. You simply cannot outrun who you are. The rule locked him into a grueling, agonizing physical defense. Without any magical assistance, he had to push his physical body to the absolute limit, standing and fighting to maintain the boundary between worlds for 3 straight hours.
Let's move to Section 4, Time Manipulation Protocol, the Carrier of Time.
And this brilliantly illustrates how quickly a battlefield can evolve. Despite San's sheer willpower and Kieran's massive firewall, the Vanguard was breaking. They were vastly outnumbered and their lines were buckling hard. That brings us to the arrival of Mitsuki Asante at the Mirror Gate. Her arrival completely changed the game. She wields a level 1 dormant sigil called Chronochrome. Initially, she used it to weaponize the moon's gravitational force, raining torrential weight down on the enemy. But its true awakened form is something else entirely. It visually transports the entire battlefield into a massive, surreal dimension of floating, grinding clocks. By manipulating these literal cogs of fate, Mitsuki can slow her enemy's perception of time down to an absolute halt, effectively freezing them right in their tracks.
But of course, there's always a massive catch. To awaken this time-freezing power, Mitsuki's strict condition requires her team to defeat exactly 400 enemies, mathematically proving they are in a state of dire crisis. Let's walk through this carefully. San, fighting barehanded, had only managed 92 defeats. They were out of time and vastly short of the target. So what did they do? They improvised. Mitsuki used the communication network to link her sigil directly to Concordia's massive data strike capabilities back at the border wall. The data-sharing mathematics here are incredible. The very moment Concordia registered on the network as a teammate, her citywide non-lethal arrow strikes instantly fulfilled the 400 enemy quota for Mitsuki. This brilliant strategic loophole allowed Mitsuki to freeze the entire Nightmare army for a crucial hour and a half.
Which brings us to Section 5, sealing the dimensional breach, the final 30 minutes.
So, when that hour-and-a-half time freeze finally wore off, there were exactly 30 minutes left in the Eclipse, and the Nightmares immediately resumed their rampage. They needed a permanent solution fast. Here is how they pulled off the final stabilization, and it's really fascinating to compare the different factions' effectiveness here. While the Dream Knights relied on synergistic data mapping and precision non-lethal strikes to hold the city, Gramps and his Gamma Nightmares utilized overwhelming localized brute force to effectively contain their own sector. Both distinct strategies were totally required to hold the line. San linked up with his Gramps, who had secured his area. Together, they plunged the navy and golden blades of the Silver Reaper into the earth. By channeling tremendous vibrations through the soil, they located every major dimensional passage worldwide. They tied the blade's energy directly to those tears in reality and triggered the ancient Endergen seal. During this grueling 30-minute channeling process, both of them are completely defenseless, relying entirely on their respective teams to hold the line.
Finally, Section 6, Prophecies and Aftermath, Emotional Bonds and Cellular Regeneration.
As the moon moved away from the sun, reality finally stabilized. But man, the cost was immense. In the immediate aftermath, San collapsed, triggering 3 ancient rules back-to-back. Rule 7. He kept his promise to meet his friend Ciela under the sun, moon, and stars. This created a stunning visual alteration of the Dream City landscape, where glowing lunar flowers miraculously bloomed over a war-torn cityscape, and ocean starfish literally washed up right on the battlefield. But the physical toll threw San into a coma. This triggered Rule 8, where Ciela's desperate tears combined with his family's channeled energy revived him from the brink of death. In her panic, she found his gear, fulfilling Rule 9. She sees him as he truly is. The incredible lesson here is that in the Dreamweaver lore, raw power doesn't drive reality. Emotional choices, kept promises, and profound human connections literally dictate the manifestation of magic.
But survival came with a biological price, fulfilling the 10th rule, attaining the strength to unlock the ancient seals. Imagine waking up with the strength of a literal god, but possessing the motor skills of an infant. That is the biological price of the 10th rule. By channeling the Endergen seal, San pushed way too much supernatural power through a fragile human body. He suffered severe biological backlash, his body degenerating and then rapidly regenerating on a cellular level. He woke up immensely powerful, but he couldn't control himself at all. His strikes were awkward, and his unmitigated momentum caused him to literally crash into walls, forcing the Nightmare King to place an inhibiting seal on him. The lesson? True power isn't just handed to you. It requires immense precision, suffering, and grounding discipline to truly master.
So the crucial point is really clear when we look at this tactical breakdown. We see an incredible contrast in how the Dream Knights achieved victory. Let's compare these 2 core strategies. At the border wall, Arlene and Concordia executed a flawless, ranged artillery data warfare campaign. Their primary focus was mapping and containment, using non-lethal suppression to safely neutralize coastal hotspots from afar. But look at the Eternal Mirror Gate. Here, San, Kirin, and Mitsuki were fighting a desperate, bloody vanguard melee. Their combat style relied entirely on physical blockades and risky time manipulation just to survive and prevent mass infiltration. It was the perfect synergy of high-level strategic intelligence in the rear and raw, frontline grit at the gates that ultimately saved both worlds.
As we wrap up this explainer, I've got to leave you with a question directly inspired by the science and magic of the celestial transition. In this lore, eclipses thin the veil, allowing what we consume, what we fear, and what we dream to literally cross over and walk among us. So ask yourself, if the line between dreams and reality suddenly blurred today, what dormant fears or wild aspirations in your own subconscious might be quietly manifesting in your real world right now? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the 3-hour solar eclipse incursion. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.